Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with the 9-time GSL champion, the Terran in the red, the man, the myth, the Maru. Facing off against arguably the smartest Zerg in the game, in the blue, the Overmind. We have Lambo. In a best-of-3 Terran versus Zerg showdown as part of the $10,000 LiuLi Cup. And before we get started, it'd be incredible if you could smash that like button. Maybe even subscribe. Let me count the algorithm. And Jimmy, what are we at? 1,810 likes on this video, on this cast, and I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways, because I don't know what else I'd do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. As the first Reaper citizens arrest! And oh no, first blood is drawn by the drones! So rarely said, but so exquisitely savored. You know, I'll stand by that. Unlike the Reaper taken down, as in its hubris, it just went a little bit too close. And the drones bit off more than enough of it. Wow. Maru. And of course, Maru already has 3 command centers. He has a single Marine. This is not just a small concern. This is quite a kerfuffle. With 1 Marine, he's going to greedily switch over, but already loses an SCV. And going up to the high ground, but the door's open. Which is good and bad, but this is all before Zergling Speed gets a second SCV. This is escalating. The Marine itself, the SCV's body block out, and really, the blue mineral workers are called off the line, and they're the ones who hurt most when both these sides have at each other. A rambunctious start, to say the least. Losing that first Reaper, which, yes, it's supposed to be a scout, but it's also a deterrent. The Reaper existing essentially invalidates any sort of aggression the Zerg tries to do before Zergling Speed. But losing the Reaper opens up that opportunity, and the Overlord is going to spot the 3rd command center off to the corner. I don't think Maru was trying to hide it. It's just the closest place to where he wants to land it. And, you know, having a little bit of a cushion here for Lambo, who... definitely the underdog. Well, really, there's only 1 Zerg who arguably isn't against Maru. And Sarah here right now. The first of many creep tumors will be sniped off. Well, several. And Lambo actually took the base right down the center. Researching interference matrix, but it's a fake. Trying to convince the Overlord that it's going to be the cloak upgrade on the tech lab, but really, the threat of Banshees with Cloak is almost as good as the Banshees themselves. Of course, that's not literally true in many scenarios, but against Lambo, he knows exactly what he wants to build, those Spore Crawlers, the lair. And if for some reason he scouted no Tech Lab upgrading, he'd be able to cut those out and get a little bit more economy. And because he's already gained so much map control, he's even expanding to the 9 o'clock, which is a bit of a unique experience. Is he calling his bluff, by the way? He's not getting any spores besides the one he tried to dodge the initial Banshee hits with. And now adding a few more on. Covering his bases, but the spores again... Ooh, a second lair was started for a moment, but pulls back into the Baneling nest, the evolution chambers. More drones on the way. And Maru, in typical Maru fashion, just now adding on barracks 2 and 3. It's not going to be Mech. We're sticking with the Marines, and eventually the Medevacs. And what, is that a Raven? In this economy? Huh. Curious. Now, most Terrans, you'd have to cut off their pinky finger and threaten to feed it to them in order to get them to build a Raven. And then, even then, they'd probably ask, is it my keyboard or my mouse hand? And which one would be more damaging? I think it'd be keyboard hand, definitely. Could probably... Kind of weird to think about. But, you know, food for thought. Like, pinkies. Hydroden on the way. Creep is already halfway across the map. The amount of space that Lambo has been able to grab. That Raven strayed a bit close, but the auto turret slapped down. And is it getting hot in here, or is it just me, Susan? That wasn't funny the first time. It wasn't funny the 37th time, Brenda. Actually, it's the 69th time. No, Brenda. You are 6 minutes old. Okay. Sorry. I Black there. An infestation pit is already on the way. Lambo, not cutting any corners. In fact, just growing this spore. Maru, I'm gonna notice it, but he's caught between the spore and the queens. Bit of a cheeky move there. Maybe overthinking it a bit and now allowing the Banshee to get a few extra kills. Of course, Lambo will plummet to a 13-worker lead. The infestation pit obscenely quick. The melee attack and carapace will be just about 20 seconds behind Maru, if that. So already quite a lot of progression here for Lambo. And not something you can always expect to have against a Terran. All these little details in the early game start to add up. The Overlord, barely saved by the Queens with the Transfuse. And things looked a little weird. Maybe my eyes are... Maybe I'm losing it. What am I losing? What aren't I losing? Like and subscribe for Existential Dread. Hive on the way. No Lurker Den yet, but the Hive itself for Adrenal Glands, Vipers, both very useful. The Raven, the scan being used to scout whether the Raven will be safe, which seems a little bit hypocritical there, but so far, helping Maru to keep control of the situation, and the creep creep spread definitely could have metastasized significantly further without it at the front. Lambo has had no intention of getting aggressive, but instead solidifying that late game, not that mid game, but the late game economy. 87 drones. He's got 5 bases. He's got double upgrades. The Hive is finishing at 8 minutes. Maru is going to be maxing out soon as well, but he's just now taken his 4th. Lambo's going to have his pick of attack timings here. We'll see if he decides to smash the base down the front or try to slip around. Maru already setting up quite a depot wall and kind of a scattered set in order to funnel the Zerglings, because sometimes it's better to control the flow of the Zerglings rather than wall them out entirely. Couple Vipers on the way. And Adrenal Glands as well, but a couple Queens. 3! Gunned down right at the edge of the creep. And there's no escape for them. But vengeance might be on the agenda. Brenda's revenge is a dish best served as soon as possible. As Maru is getting closer to 200 supply, the Banshee's finally knocked out of the sky. Command Center has deigned to fly. And so far, things for both sides haven't gone particularly awry. In fact, the supply is soon to be in a tie. Scan spots the army, or at least a small group of it. Lambo with the Hydra speed and range. He's getting +1 missile attack alongside +2 carapace. So focused more and more on the Hydralisk. Very notably, no Lurker Den, no Ultralisk Cavern. He's got the Vipers up to the north side. Spots the base at the 12 o'clock, and this seems to be the first major target. As we've been going back and forth for a little while now, but both sides are maxed out. Lambo with way more in the bank, but Maru with an increasingly entrenched position. Here are the Vipers. Blinding Cloud gonna be helpful. Anti-armor missile on some of the Zerglings. Picks up the command center. Banelings rolling through. The Marines will retreat back behind the lines. Another Blinding Cloud negates some of the siege tanks. Gets closer and closer, but the second planetary fallback and some more siege tanks are enough to get him to turn around. But overall, I think a successful attack for Lambo. He denied the base. Knocked out several of the siege tanks. Got a whole bunch of the Marines. The tally? Sure. A costly one, but he can replace those Zerglings. Now, 6 hatcheries and counting, 2 more in production. Lurker Den. Wouldn't be surprised to see a Nidus network momentarily, because that's usually the best way. The further out the Terran expands, the more you want to drag them away from their base, and then get your worms inside it. It's a good thing. Don't make it weird. The Raven anti-armor missile, and Maru has been babysitting that Raven. Is he going to use the abducts? Oh no! He's going to wish he did as the EMPs come out. The first few goes. And without the Vipers, the siege tanks of the planetary will hold. And the concave of Terran turns that engagement into a rout for the Zerg. This time around, he lost 1 siege tank and 1 Marine for, are you kidding me, 79 Zerglings, 16 Banelings, and Maru killed his own ghost with the siege tanks, I have to assume. And a single SCV. I don't know how that one got caught in there. Lambo, I mean, he has the map. He knows that it's dark and potentially full of Terrans, but he's narrowed down the locations those Terrans could be. Still, no. Breaking Maru. Yeah, that's gonna keep happening. Breaking Maru once he's kind of hardened into his shell. The Porcupine Terran. Any place you go, you're gonna get some of the quills at the very least. Maru playing defensive, but not necessarily passive. Moving forward. Vipers, Blinding Cloud, the Ghosts. Don't land the EMPs quite yet. Blinding Clouds on most of this. Might be able to take out the Planetary. Banelings, an Acidic Shield to zone everything out. The base is ping cushioned by the Hydras. Another wave of siege tanks, but he just rolls through. Meanwhile, no, Maru with the counterattack. The double drop takes out one hatch. A few more Marines set on another. And it might be one base for the price of two. Lambo ends up losing probably more than he gained so far in this engagement. But still, denying the economy, he still has the entirety of the western half of the map. Maru is on 4 bases, and the main base is all but mined out. 400 gas and a few hundred minerals left. Some of the Marines. They'll expect some of us in the wreckage, brothers. Yikes. Re-expanding. Lambo holding it together. Casual 2,000 APM as I assume he spams out another few dozen sets of Zerglings and plenty of creep. Maru. He's got more CCs than poorly formatted corporate email chain right now. It is 4 orbital commands, building 2 more. Not nearly as many as I thought. A planetary to wall things off. And just having them in the general area kind of serves the purpose of a medieval castle almost, where it just controls the area around it. It's not supposed to be the be-all, end-all, but it's certainly difficult to break. And going around it is not the easiest option, though Lambo seems to choose it either way. The planetary will be taken down, no hope of repair. The Banelings chasing down the Ghosts. There's no infestors to hold him in place. He eventually retreats. Another base attempted to... Ooh. A whole bunch of Hydras are taken down, and this time, I mean, the numbers are starting to stack up. 22,000 resources lost for Lambo, just 12k for Maru. The Hydras, the Zerglings, the Banelings are successful. But I don't think they're successful enough. And neither does Lambo. Finally, adding an Infestor into production. Believe he finished off... No Greater Spire. Not quite yet. He doesn't have the Lurker upgrades either. But against Mass Ghost Siege Tank, Lurkers are of questionable veracity. Those are already the pre-built counters. And you might be like, well, what counters Ghosts? Usually a mass of units and an Infestor in the right place at the wrong time, or vice versa, depending on who you're rooting for. Marines in the bottom right corner, Marines in the top left. Maru about 2/3 of the way, 3/4 to the bingo strategy there. More Marines stutter stepping back. Full energy Vipers chasing down, but the creep is notoriously absent. Queens. More macro hatcheries being added on. And those infestors added in. Means Maru has to be a little bit more careful, but the Marines somehow survive. Queen's just kind of bouncing around. Lambo clearly has a hotkey for both creep and injects. And is queuing absolutely everything out, but they have so much work to do and never enough time to do it. Wings and Banes will easily take out the drop. 3 infestors in the mix now. Will burrow and increase his chances by spreading him out. All it takes is 1. There are 14 Ghosts on the field. And most, if not all of them, are in approximately 1 radius of a fungal. So, if Maru's not careful about it, and I'm sure he will be, but if he's... The Raven lived. He never repaired it. But the Raven will help him spot one of the infestors, but it has remarkably little detection radius. There you go. For all those, why don't people just build a Raven? Well, the Raven actually has a very low sight/detection radius, but it's non-zero. That is a good point. The scan is slightly larger, but that's like saying mean things that I'm not gonna say out loud because, you know, it's a rough day and People don't need that. Your mother has enough struggles. The Raven just kind of unceremoniously dies after all that, being hyped up for so long, subverting expectations by dying in a casual fight. Infestor comes out, a fungal from the grave. But the ghosts line up their shots, and another musket line. A volley of snipes will take out enough of the Hydras. A Venn diagram of freedom, double planetary, the most siege location. But he's gonna dismantle it with the crowbar of Zerg, the Vipers, the Banelings, and this much acid just completely neutralizes this line of bases. There's a drone mixed in. I always wanted to be a Zergling. And meanwhile, over to the right side, Hydras, Lings, Banes, but the Ghosts are in position to deal with this and pulls back just in time to avoid disaster. The Vipers get out. Nidus Worm, a bit optimistic on the front. The Creep is still just covering pretty much everything to the north, lacking nearly that amount of luster in the south. Some more tactical Nidus Worms in order to maneuver around the bases, like this is the Brood War. Things slowing down just a bit. Lambo has lost nearly twice as many resources and almost evenly distributed between minerals and gas. But he's mined 12,000 more minerals, though slightly less gas. Maru is finally getting high-sec auto-tracking, building armor. The Creep is currently encroaching actively on command centers, a planetary down the center. Couple more factories for that late-game mech switch. Maru keeps trying to mine from this base. Multiple Widow mines will take big bites out of the Zerglings. He yanks out the Liberator. The orbital command will be able to escape. Blinding Cloud helps out. But the siege tanks are just chewing into the Banelings. And in the last 90 seconds... Oh, I was reading that. Well, Maru had quite an advantage. Brenda! What? Nothing. So there is a downside to doing shift Q, creep tumor shift Q injects. And it's the queens will very diligently move between the bases, but they move in the shortest possible path. And they do not account for the joint pain or the struggles of being on or off creep. All right, they don't factor that in when calculating what direction they should go. So that can create some cartography issues as time goes on, despite the redonkulous amount of creep on the map right now. Maru still with literally a scattered minefield, siege tanks behind. He's almost looking like the box art, unironically now, the way he's setting up this Terran base. There's a single infestor. EMP washes it out. The Banelings try to climb the ramp. They will not succeed. A wave of Overseers attempting to maintain detection. I believe there's still a nuclear missile in the bank. At Maru, is this enough bases? So Lambo will have, at this rate, 2 more bases to mine from. Each of them is about 11,000 minerals and 4,500 gas. So, can he be 31,000 resources more cost-effective? At the current rate, it's a big maybe. He's killed 1 ghost, which he's gonna need to do better than that, because there's currently 16. Maru does not seem to be intending on moving out at all. The Niduses were attempted. The siege line runs deep and gives him time for the reinforcements to get to the front. The Vipers, the Ghosts line up their shots. The Blinding Clouds, they do nothing. They don't work against the snipes, only against the auto attacks. But he knocks out the base, and Lambo still has 8,000 minerals and 2,500 gas. He'll spin up another round, though almost out of larva, which is the limiting factor. Maru is down to 45 SCVs, which is not a mistake. That's a good thing. He's replaced most of them with automation, or just cut them out entirely. 8 orbital commands, the Ocha. A volley of scans across the map, making sure he keeps tabs on pretty much everything. Lambo with a greater spire, in production. Broodlords are a hard sell at this point. Banelings and a Nidus. Maru found another command center. It wasn't hard to find. The creep is pushed back. This hatchery still has a lot of resources. In fact, he's only barely been mining the gas. He just started. Here comes Lambo. A full-on engagement. The Banelings trying to roll through. The Marauders and Marines forming a battle line, and the siege tanks behind, making it difficult to close the distance. And Maru still has only lost one ghost. The drones will pile into the Nidus Worm. And maybe could transfer. I mean, where is there left to go? In fact, at this point, that's too many drones for Lambo. He might have the economy. And besides the short Mule Mountain, the Mule Island in the Sea of Blue, Lambo, well, Corruptors being added in. He's lost only 23 Hydras, which actually, he's been very efficient with them throughout the map. Another solar flare is sent out from Maru. And the nuclear launch is finally detected. I think Lambo spotted it immediately. In the Ghost, maybe getting a little far forward here. Gonna take out the Ghost. The nuke flies off into the sunset to create a new one. And right now, Maru's actually on the creep. Surprising he hasn't cleared this out yet. He should have enough scans. 9 orbital commands. 10 Corruptors on the way, but Lambo's almost out of gas. He needs to break the Ghost Ball. But the EMP lands before the fungal can come out, and Maru is just making this look impossible. He's got plus 3/3 mech for his siege tanks and the Hellbats he's mixing in. He's lost 20-something thousand less resources. The drones are on the run. The Infestor, he's just throwing the drones into the mix as well. The Corruptors overhead. The Ghost will fully retreat behind the siege line and plink down the Banelings as they roll through. And the snipes are lined up. The drones actively killing siege tanks. I mean, not very fast. And Lambo kills everything. And he gets one... Wait, Yes, technically Lambo killed that one additional Ghost. Technically. But Maru... Well, Maru is broke. But he's not broken. He has so much invested in his infrastructure. Thing is, Lambo, he can rebuild some. But how much progress could he make with planetary fortresses and liberators and widow mines back at home? Maru forced the fight. And with it, he may very well win the war. Maru's patience. And he's not passive. There's a whole lot of aggression, just never letting Lambo take a fight. This is the first time it feels like the tanks were unsieged in the middle of the field before Lambo came in, and, you know, well, oh, there are the Ghosts. And there's more siege tanks down here, and it looks dangerously close, but, there's one Infestor underneath, but... Are you kidding me? 2 Ghosts? Are you 2 Gs? 1 G for every Ghost he on paper, Lambo, with a solid execution of that kind of base-denying strategy. But Maru just doesn't die. He stayed a little bit ahead of him. Notice how Maru, he's not maxed out. He doesn't have a ton of money in the bank. But he has more than enough. Hundreds of Banelings. After thousands of Zerglings. But only 2 Ghosts. He just could never catch them. He always had a fallback position. He had somewhere to go before the hammer dropped. Ooh. Both frustrating and impressive simultaneously. Like, those Ghosts always playing hard to get. And so smoothly transitioned. By the time there was even a threat of things like Lurk, we saw the Lurker down, we had the Greater Spire. I don't think it was a mistake for Lambo to kind of ignore them. Because until, like, those are the tech you go for after you break the Ghost Ball. But if he keeps rolling, your best bet is usually the best. It's just, wow, clinical out of Maru. He wrote the book on this and continues to add additional chapters. Wow. I will see. Winter Madness, which is what I'm feeling just a little bit for Game 2. And that, I think, is historically Lambo's greatest struggle. Like, he's got the perfect strategy in theory, but the execution just isn't quite good enough. And now, recently, even Cyril's execution has not been good enough to break Maru's late-game prowess. So, we'll have to see as time goes on if somebody can figure it out. But the changes from last year. Ghosts are now 2 supply again, and they're light units. So that means you can build more ghosts, but they're more vulnerable to banelings. Otherwise, they have 125 HP, which is 25 more than they did. So everything else besides banelings, it's harder to kill those ghosts. So now there's a bunch of other stuff that was mixed in. But it does seem like the result, if you perfectly, always, and never, ever mess it up, have your ghosts in the right spot before the right time, through all the fire and fury, it looks near impossible. But getting there is a titanic effort as well. A drone died. A second drone. Trying to recreate the previous success, but Maru out for blood. And of course, 3 command center before, and wow, 3, 2, 1, 1. Wait, no. 1 Rax, 3 CC, and then adding a second barracks. It's greedier than the first iteration. He can't keep getting away with it. But he does, and he will. And I seriously doubt Lambo will, 1, scout this in time for it to matter, and 2, even if he did, I don't... Churlish, I didn't support it! Get off my Did he get away again, Brendo? I like to think he evaded justice. So yes. Yes. I don't know. Sorry. Reaper escapes. Double engineering bay as Maru gonna spiral up all of his infrastructure before really having any threat of moving out. A tech lab's on the way, but he's gonna have a 1-1 in stim in production, I believe, before or right as a factory starts, which is severely delaying medevacs, but gives him a lot more power by the time they finally come out. Overlord? Did he poke in far enough to see? He saw no extra build. I think he's reading into the lack of additional buildings, because usually you'd have a barracks or a starport there. He didn't even see the racks, but the Overlord backed off, trying desperately not to get sniped. So I don't mean by ghosts, I mean just enterprising Marines. But and that was such a strong start for Lambo in the last game. And it could have translated into just a clear victory relatively early. But Maru just... he would bend, but never break. Lair on the way. Baneling Nest, relatively quick. No evolution chambers for Lambo so far. Maru already has the armor. He might start 2-2 before Lambo gets 1-1. Which would be an obscene upgrade advantage. But again, Lambo's going to have the economy and the production well before Maru, who's just now adding barracks number 4 and barracks number 5. There's the Evo chambers. So Lambo will have the quantity, and Maru will have the quality when it comes to the units through the next 3 to 5 minutes or so. 1-1. Already finishing up. Almost exactly when the evolution chambers do for Lambo. So Terran and Zerg upgrades of the same tier take exactly the same amount of time. Makes it a pretty convenient timer to know who's got the advantage. No chrono boost to skew it here. The Zerglings just sprinting across. Lambo at 62 drones. And kind of stalled out in order to make sure he has enough Zerglings to deal with any early aggression. The medevacs are coming out. Zerglings might try to jump the Marines, but he spots the medevacs and realizes they got a get out of Zerglings free card there. Infestation pit on the way, another quick one. Baneling speed, most of the way there, and Maru gave up any real attempt to shut down the early creep. Interesting how Lambo keeps expanding kind of forward to deal with this, and it seemed to work out pretty well for him in the last game. Instead of going for the more tucked-in third, he took that as his fourth. So, this helps make sure the creep spread is out there early, and it's likely you'll mine this base out quicker and have the safer ones to expand to. So again, I think, good theory. See if we can turn it into practice. Autumn colors on the Marines. Is that a double stim? Gets the extractor. Key snipe. Lambo actually hard supply blocked. And the hive? Pulls back. And the hive. There's a queen in production. Ah. That queen was supposed to be a hive. Which, you know, we've all felt like that sometimes. I don't know what it means, but it's provocative. It gets the people going. That vision out of Lambo again. Really just trying to cover all his bases and everything outside it. Narrowing down. Maru, not going to be too subtle, goes right down the center. Combat shield and 2-2 about to complete. Already 28 Banelings, 83 Zerglings for Lambo. Just pure Ling Bane against almost exclusively Marines. Now adding in Marauders and tanks, but the 2-2 upgrades are finishing up, but that's far too many Banelings to engage directly. Maru gets a little bit caught in the corner and loses a chunk of his Marines. And that may help deny the 4th base. And meanwhile, the Zerglings just kind of... Wait, what? How did they get in? They just... Oh, the ye old run-by paid off an SCV not to raise the depot, just get into the natural. And that's actually terrible, terrible damage. Gets a siege tank in the main, 7 SCVs dead, and he's not done doing the damage at the 3rd. The Marines are out in front of everything. Maru's scrambling on either side, but the Zerglings are flooding in from absolutely everywhere. He needs to staunch the bleeding somehow, but the supply depot will burn even if he was trying to keep it out. Another Baneling knocks it out. The orbital command is vulnerable. Maru retreats back to the main, but this lightning strike of Zerglings and Banelings is enough to gut the economy, knock out a whole chunk of the army. And the mules will drop to something of a stimulus check to try to hold it together. But there's already an ultralisk cavern in production. The hive is complete. The adrenal glands are on the way. And Lambo is in pole position. And this time around, Maru has taken critical damage at an important time. He might have the upgrades, but does he have the army to wield them? Doubtful. There's 125 Zerglings. 15 Banelings on the way. The Ultralisk Cavern is completing. Lambo at a cool 78 drones, adding a few more. But Maru is not going to have the tech. He's not going to have the upgrades. He doesn't have the siege tank line that runs incredibly deep. In fact, he's got 1 siege tank and 2 Widowmines. No Liberators to complement them. Only 3 orbital commands. None of those later game advantages he enjoyed in the previous one. Now, medevacs on either side getting caught, and Maru not able to be absolutely everywhere at once, believe it or not. As Lambo just crushing through another wave of banelings, another wave of Zerglings, the SCV's on the run, but is there anywhere to run to? Banelings crashing through on either side. The planetary fortress is taken down. The siege tank on the high ground will help. But will it help enough? Absolutely not. 40 SCVs and plummeting. There's nothing to stop the Lings on the field right now, let alone the next half a dozen rounds. Ultraless in production. The exclamation point to end this death sentence. But Lambo has completely overrun Maru. And right now, Maru he knows how absolutely terrible this position is. But he has a dream that he can maybe fight it out. There's the tiny chance. Now, does he know? He doesn't know about the 12 o'clock nor the 9 o'clock base. And ignorance is bliss. While he lacks that information, he can pretend like he isn't in an incredibly dire economic situation. Mules are good. I don't think they're good enough. And those ultras, I think, have GGs strapped to their faces. Just takes Maru to read them off. Oh, looks like it. The GG lists. The best use of ultras is when they show up and win the game. Just kind of solidifying your victory. If you have to fight with them. All right, those are display ultras right there. They're not meant to be fought with. And Maru decides, yeah, he sniped off one extractor. 250 Zerglings died in the making of this victory. Dozens of banelings, and those are only the ones that died before they attacked. I'm sure plenty managed to get their attacks off, but Lambo strikes back with a downpour, a torrential rain of Zerglings in pretty much every single base simultaneously. And we're all tied up. Lambo taking the second best Terran player in the world to match point. Yeah, best of 3, but... And now... in his good luck pink Zerg. Definitely a different vibe. I always feel like, unfortunately, we can't change the colors in replays. And most tournaments have explicit rules about it being blue versus red. Even though the players can change to like whatever color they'd like as a player color. Mostly for visibility. Though, I wish we'd have a little bit more variety. Variety is the spice of life. The spice must flow. It's like likes and subscribes. It's really shoehorned in there. But in Game 3, in Maru, somewhat surprisingly, with all of his SCVs in his own base. Not going for the proxy racks, not trying to pull one over on him. But instead, one racks expand will be the ticket. And Maru, well, that was the thing. Maru invested in a whole bunch of Marines. He got the medevacs. But because he completely abandoned map control, meant Lambo could set up for those constant Zergling strikes. And even though Maru was building up into a very strong army, he just didn't have any momentum. You start from nothing. Even, like, you have to move out of your base and start to make some progress. But you're doing it so late that the Zerg has already creeped about half the map and is looking for the other half as soon as possible. So that was, I think, Lambo there clearly putting theory into practice. Taking the Zerg potential and making it kinetic. As the mass Zergling Baneling just hit everything. And there's no way, that multitasking is a myth. Alright? It is just your ability to rotate between multiple things very quickly and potentially have them executing while you're doing another thing, whether it's shift queuing or queuing up production or sending out medevac, stuff like that. It's just the best players of every race and every variety are incredibly good at making it look like they can be in two places at once, but it's really just a sleight of hand. Maybe two. Maru's hands probably insured for a significant amount, especially with his wrist issues over the years. And that's part of why... So, for those who don't know, Maru, legitimately, it seems like every Korean Terran who started at the early teens, Flash, MVP, struggles with wrist issues. But I feel like that inspired / helped Maru solidify and perfect that late game porcupine Terran that he's so obscenely good at. But that's enough filler commentary. Lambo is doing a burrowed roach rush, which is wild. Huh. Now that is... Huh. So... Maru's going for double factory. And he's gonna have a third CC. He's going Mech, which is not necessarily good or bad, but it means he's not gonna have a Banshee, which is certainly bad against a burrowed roach rush. No lair, only 23 drones. This is one of the craziest cheeses. Huh. I come back to that statement, but the Overlord, quite a magnet here to drag the Marines out of position, but the roaches are spotted. Abandon your posts! Flee for your lives! As a cyclone will start, and the roaches are already knocking on the door. So he can burrow one, and it regenerates exceedingly quickly while burrowed, but the splash damage from the Hellions may be able to fire right through it. He's trying to limit that opportunity. Targets one, unburrows, but Maru actually holds the door for now. Lambo has pretty much doubled his drone count behind this. An incredibly interesting game. Now, Maru obviously knows there's a burrowed Zergling at the natural, which certainly complicates things. Unburrows. And for the most part, well, he does get that Zergling. Having one Cyclone makes it significantly easier to deal with this. Almost certainly going to confirm kills. And the Cyclones whittling down the roach count dramatically. Lambo's up to 58 drones back at home. But Maru, he loses 6 SCVs, and it's quite a... You stall pretty much everything to go for the burrowed roaches. 100 gas early. Your first 100 gas for Zerg is a huge investment. It's usually Zergling speed. In this case, he went for burrow. He has no Zergling speed. Oh, nice Evo chamber block. Bit of a dicey one there if he didn't get that. The drones were all lined up, but for now, the roaches. Finds an Overlord. Bit of an awkward angle. They're just now finishing. Knocks down one of the Overlords. Hard supply block, which is quite unfortunate. Maru re-expanding. He actually built a starport and is now getting Banshees. But unfortunately, the Hellions just run right by. And again, this could be much worse. He actually lost 2 of the Hellions almost immediately. 6 drones is a bargain for what Lambo had to defend early. So that worker gap has dwindled dramatically. 57 to 46 now. Still in favor of Lambo, but there are 3 command centers. Maru diligently pumping out the SCVs. He's got an armory on the way. He's got 2 factories and a 3rd in production, taking us back to McDonald's. Maru showing he can play all sorts of Terran, though technically haven't seen any Mech yet today. I guess if you don't count the extreme late game, which isn't really Mech, it's more of a just end game chessboard sort of composition. Infestation Pit, and honestly, it doesn't need to be Hive. It could be. But Swarm Hosts are a non-zero possibility. especially against the relatively early mech. So technically, Lambo never saw the second factory. But the mass cyclone, I'm pretty sure he just lost an overseer to mag-filled accelerator cyclones, because they have their little laser sights on them now, indicating they got the upgrade for 50% more lock-on damage. Burrow move is on the way. Another great answer to cyclones is, as always, the infestors. Even a single fungal. I mean, Terran has units that are optimized for cowardice. They're also good at running away and evading direct confrontation, much like Terrans in social situations. So, anything you can do to kind of force them into an engagement is usually the best choice. A Banshee and a Raven. The Roaches and Ravagers scattered throughout. Lambo at 69 drones, which is a nice enough economy for this sort of composition, but certainly not what he wants in the later game. Siege tanks being mixed into Maru's army. The Roaches. It's not straight up battle mech. It's not just Hellions and Cyclones. Enough siege tanks to make sure the Roaches are gonna have a real tough time. There's already a Raven as well. So with the Banshee, the Banshee's with speed on the way. Lambo gonna try to close in from either side. He doesn't have burrow move done, but it's not too relevant in this scenario. Looking to knock out. He doesn't even get that first siege tank, and this attack is a bit disjointed. It's gonna cost a lot of the Roaches. 19 SCVs were pulled to the front lines. Maru used them as a buffer for the tanks, and he ends up losing the vast majority. But he doesn't lose the tanks themselves. And with the Banshees to chase all those down, for now, Lambo is pushed back. Another 10 drones in production. Banshee's speed is closing in. And the only anti are starting to pop out some Hydras now. Roach Hydra. Quite an old composition, but it certainly checks out. Some Vipers added in. That's really the key here. Without the Vipers, it's just seeing how many kills the siege tanks can rack up before you angrily tap out of the game. Spire is on the way as well. Much more technical sort of setup that we saw in game number 1. Lambo focusing on finding the right tech to deal with the mech. And Maru trying to bring the mech together. He's constantly scanning because, unlike with Marines and Ghosts, you don't have a lot of built-in anti-air. You don't have a great answer to Mass Viper, nor Broodlords. Muta's not really a threat as long as you have more than a few Cyclones. Probably could have stopped halfway through that sentence, but 4 Banshees with a Raven, the Burrowed Roach Extermination Squad, which, a very specific counter, but very helpful as well. Lambo, I would say trading out those Roaches, but he doesn't have that kind of money. 184 to 148 supply. The Cyclones have got that hatchery in their sights. Will force the cancel. Now +2 mech weapons as well as +1 mech armor in production. Lambo already has +2 attack for ranged attack. Not going for Carapace at all. A greater Spire is on the way. Broodlords have some potential. The Vipers. Lambo's maxed out. That army is pretty much everything he has. The Burrow of Roaches, the Viper's looking for an opportunity. There's no EMPs here. Blinding Clouds are good. Allow him to filter forward. Those supply depots getting in the way of things. Might be able to just target down the orbital command. A lot of targets, but even more siege tanks behind it. The damage starting to rack up. Burrow move Roaches, even if they're detected, starting to draw some fire. And Lambo slowly chipping his way through the siege line, and both sides thinning out dramatically. But Maru is forced off of the base. He loses 22 SCVs. The Banshees, again, will allow him to survive 8 kills, 6 kills, 5. But Ravagers and Hydras and Roaches are all valuable targets. Lambo still with 73 drones. Not enough to just refill the army immediately, but that's partially a larva issue. only 4 queens, spread between 5+ hatcheries, and spending a lot of their time just traveling. So, clearly using the Shift Q base camera injects. Don't know if we can go to the Lambo action cam. Getting things set up, constantly re-rallying. Zerglings, counterattack, in position, and more injects across the board. Lambo in a good position, and he's maxed out. You're like, isn't that a great position? I wouldn't go that far, because of the upgrades, and the fact that breaking, how many tanks? 11 siege tanks. Entrenched behind planetary fortresses. But the real advantage here for Lambo is he's mining untouched. 5 Vipers are swinging in. There's no anti-air. He should be able to blinding cloud pretty much the entire siege line. But look at that spread. I can't believe it's not butter. 4 or 5 blinding clouds. And wipes out the front line of siege tanks. But there's more where that came from. They cannot be abducted ever since the last patch. And Lambo certainly not as excited about that here. But Maru again, able to drive the Zerg back at heavy cost, but a price he's willing to pay, at least for now. Lambo maintains the income lead. The Vipers just slurping out the hatchery. Blue Flame Hellions try to run by. The first real iteration of counter damage for quite a while for Maru. He's got +3 mech weapons and +2 armor in production. And again, he's entrenched behind his bases. Lambo is mining from almost twice as many. But you can only get to 200 supply. And the upgrades are not incredibly inspiring. Lambo, some burrowed Zerglings scattered throughout, but Maru more than willing to scan almost randomly in order to make sure that no armies are bearing down on him. The Lords of the Brood are in production. You always have to be careful. He's killing his own roaches. I think he just killed off those last few roaches. He spots a Greater Spire. Maru scanned the Greater Spire, and now 4 Thors. And however many years ago, we decided that Thors would be like 3 Goliaths in a trench coat. We said, we need a unit that both looks badass on the box and can counter every other unit in the game. We need a unit that puts your mother and her size to shame. We need a massive unit that is a big-ass robot that can fight some big-ass Zerg. And I think that was most of the design process, and almost certainly is lore accurate. You've played the Wings of Liberty campaign. All right, they tried to make an even bigger one. But, you know, let's be a little realistic. Gotta have some agility to shuffle around. And there's already plenty of Vikings. A fusion core is on the way. Mass Liberator, but there's some other options. And I'm not putting battle cruisers completely out of the equation here. The Vikings, the Vipers, yanks in the Vikings, which is kind of a crazy move. But the Thors are here. And, well, there's not that much anti-air. The Broodlords just bashing their way through. The Thors are not enough for now. 4 more Thors in production. The Broodlords are starting to thin out. The SCV's trying to repair the Broodlords. Now you have to target fire the siege tanks. Otherwise, the Broodlings nibbling at their ankles might be too much. And indeed, they are for now. The Broodlords are pushing all the way through. Maru, he's pushed onto the brink. The Broodlords overhead still raining down. And, well, Lambo is 72 drones behind. He's at only 5-6 Broodlords, but nearly maxed out. There's no Corruptors left. Hey, come back here! I don't... The Queens will patch them up. And Maru is just 1 base away from disaster. He'll re-expand, drops a bunch of mules at the 6 o'clock position. The Broodlord's bearing down yet again. The Vikings engaging directly. The Queen sauntering up. And Lambo is a bit optimistic in how much damage he can get done here. The Zerglings are thinned out quickly. The Vipers are way late to this party. The Queen's trying to hold them together. Blinding Cloud across the board. I can't see shit. I don't... But the Thors are holding. And the Vikings hit the... Oh, no. He dug too deep and too greedily. I could feel it. Every Zerg is like, okay, finally. Finally, I can kill him. But rumors of Maru's demise may have been greatly exaggerated. There's Neural Parasite on the way. 3 more Vipers. Lambo ended up losing, oh my, in 40 seconds. 5,700 minerals. 3,400 gas was destroyed. Apparently that also includes 1 Thor. Whereas Lambo only destroyed 1 Thor himself. 3 Vikings. Seems wrong. But for Terran it feels so right. Lambo clearly overextending. But he still has an obscene economy. So that is a mistake he might afford to make. The Ravagers, the Hydras, lunges. Does he have building armor? No. A scan in the bottom left corner. Lambo's been comfortably mining from here. Not too many drones, but that's not really the point. The Thor count, 4 of them. In the Infestors with Neural Parasite. If you can't beat them, your best option is to hire them. So those Thors could certainly be the ticket. And around the siege tanks. Doesn't even kill the tank. Lambo. Gonna knock out one of the orbital commands. There's a optimistic hatchery to the north. Blinks away another siege tank. And Maru is completely mined out of the main. Nearly mined out of the natural. Only a couple hundred gas left. Lambo loses 15 drones to some Hellions. Replacing a few already. But he's got over half the map. You've seen this story before, but there are no ghosts. There's no liberators. There's no perfect siege line. It's just a bunch of Thors. Are there any Infestors? No. So no Neural Parasite, but mass Ravager Hydralisk. But the full energy Vipers out in front. Blinding Cloud on most of the siege tanks. Can yank the Thors into the fray. Somehow can yank a Thor, but not a siege tank. Blinding Cloud. More tanks sieging up. The Thor's in full retreat. Another siege line will drive the Ravager Hydra back. Maru, up to 63 SCVs. I don't know if he actually dropped that far. He's lost 81 of them this game. He's only taken out 1 hatchery through all this. A few Cyclones on the way, which is the poor man's Thor. A whole bunch of idle SCVs, but honestly, there's not that many mineral patches to mine from. Lambo just grabs absolutely everything. He's still got the massive income lead. He hasn't lost that many more resources. Only 68 drones is not a ridiculous economy, but Maru losing the siege tank, the Vipers. Oh, Cyclone locks on. Might be able to take out... Whoa, 1 HP... What? How did it die? I'm not even sure. Maybe that last shot. And Maru with 96 army supply. Absolutely refuses to die. Another round of Hellbats. But Lambo's maxed out yet again. He doesn't have that much in the bank. But Maru has less. 11 siege tanks. The Broodlords have not been rebuilt. Lambo now mining from even the center base. Slurping up some more energy on the Vipers. The standoff continues as Maru running out of options and running out of resources. He's got 110 army supply, which still... Lambo has not made the mistake of over-droning this time either. He has a comfortable 65 drones when you're maxed out with 4 more bases. Burrow move roaches as well. Sneaking into the main. And... oh, he tries to turn it around. Blinding Cloud on the siege tank. The roaches just on top of the production. And Maru has to scramble back to defend. He's going to lose another orbital command. He's going to get all his reinforcements cut off. And it may very well be too much. The siege tanks. But Lambo just chipping away. He can build some infestors. He's got the Vipers. It's not going to make it much easier. Yanks in one Thor after another. And Maru is flat broke. He's bled out on the field. The pieces of the Mech army scattered throughout. And Lambo has not overcommitted. He's maintained exactly the amount of army he needs in order to deal with this. And so far, there's only so much left. Maru with a few siege tanks scattered throughout, but he hasn't been able to get any counter damage done. Locks on. The Thors, one. The only one that remains. And Lambo, the Burrow move, that's it! GG! Overtakes Maru. And in 2 games in a row, able to turn it around. A huge upset for Lambo. And also, Maru not playing poorly. But I think Lambo finally brought it together. And again, taking theory and turning it into practice. Maru has a tendency to do real set-piece builds. And if you can figure out what he's intending on early on, you can plan a few steps ahead. And not even Maru can catch up. So, big moves from the Overmind, and hopefully you enjoyed as much as I did. Thank you for watching. Hope it made your day just a little bit better. And if you got the means of motivation, it'd be awesome to check out Patreon, YouTube membership, but if you're liking and subscribing, it's still free. At least for now. So, make sure to check out this video that Jimmy picked out just for you. Thank you to our Mule Tier patrons, which Maru could have used some more. Big Jiggy Devendor, Kate, Mario, and Suit. I'm glad you still enjoy. Thank you for watching. Good luck, have fun. See you next time. Stay chill.